Can you really trust the people around you? It's a question that thuds in your chest late at night when you replay conversations, noticing in the flicker of memory a glance, a phrase, a lingering silence that didn't sit quite right. Maybe you've felt it too, that creeping uncertainty when a friend's laughter sounds a bit too sharp, or a colleague's smile doesn't reach their eyes. Maybe you've stood on the far side of trust, counting the pieces of something broken and quietly wondering how you missed the cracks forming in the first place. We live in a world of masks, some downright theatrical, others so paper-thin you'd swear they were real skin until, under just enough pressure, they peel away to reveal something unexpected, sometimes unkind. People hide, often for reasons not even they fully understand. We shape ourselves for approval, adorn ourselves with carefully curated social faces, and in the process, genuine motives and true character often slip into the shadows. You think you know someone, a friend, a lover, a mentor, but then comes a moment of stress, of conflict, of opportunity, and suddenly, the real person stands up before you, stranger and familiar all at once. This is the quiet threat in every relationship, the possibility of betrayal, disappointment, or simply the painful realization that the person you valued was never quite who you believed them to be. Maybe you've been blessed with loyalty, but I'd wager you've also tasted the bitterness of broken confidences, empty promises, and that sharp, sinking disappointment of realizing you invested your trust unwisely. The stories are as common as they are ancient: a business partner siphoning funds, a friend gossiping behind your back, a family member turning away when you most need them. Is it possible to avoid these hurts? Is there an early warning system, a way to glimpse beyond the mask before it shatters? What if you could spot the subtle tells, the flickers in behavior or tone, that speak louder than any rehearsed words ever could? Imagine investing your energy only in relationships that promise depth, reciprocity, and respect. Imagine the relief of quietly, confidently recognizing truth in others, no matter how artfully it's concealed. That's the challenge and the invitation, to learn to see. The solution isn't cynicism, nor is it withdrawal, it's discernment. Within every interaction, people leave traces of themselves if only you know how to notice. There are signs, subtle, observable, and reliable, that can help you gauge the authenticity of those around you before any real harm strikes. Think of these signs as guideposts on an unfamiliar road. Miss enough of them and you may end up lost. Notice them, and you travel with more certainty, empowered to choose who walks beside you and who you allow at a distance. Why does any of this matter? The stakes are higher than you might imagine. Your well-being, your happiness, your capacity for growth, all hinge on the quality of your connections. In friendships, in work, in love, the people you trust shape your sense of security and possibility. They create the emotional atmosphere in which you live and strive. Surround yourself with sincere, supportive souls, and you flourish almost without effort. Place your faith in those who wear masks too well, and your optimism curdles into doubt, ambition into caution, and love into guardedness. But let's not forget intuition, that deep current of knowing that hums, wordless and immediate, beneath the surface of conscious thought. Sometimes you sense something amiss, something unspoken that makes your breath catch or your palm sweat. Too often we brush this aside, trusting courtesy over instinct, conventions over gut. Yet your intuition is both ancient and wise. It notices what your mind ignores, draws connections you don't have time to consciously formulate. The art of reading character isn't only about observing others, it's about honoring the quiet voice within that urges you. Pay attention. Look again. This isn't a call to suspicion or a manifesto for distrust. It's a permission slip to seek out the genuine, to celebrate those radiant few who can meet you honestly, and to walk away without guilt when you sense the shadows lengthen. Imagine how your life would change if you felt justified in your instincts, if you let go of the need to be liked by everyone and focused, instead, on liking yourself enough to set real boundaries. As we journey together through this reflection, I'll walk you through 5 major signs that, taken together, can illuminate the hearts of those around you. These are not the tired cliches you've heard 1,000 times. They are practical, observable, and deeply rooted in both psychological insight and lived experience. They're not foolproof, and they're never the whole story, but they offer a map, one that can help you steer clear of needless heartbreak and disappointment, one that points toward the kinds of relationships that transform rather than diminish you. So, I invite you, open your eyes a little wider, listen a little more closely, not just to others, but to yourself. The journey to discernment always begins with a question. Tonight, let it be this one. Can you really trust the people around you? And what can you do to ensure your answer is yes more often than no? Let's begin. Let's begin in the everyday places where true character is revealed. Not in grand declarations or shining moments, but in the soft murmur of small interactions. Think about the people you know, the colleague who beams at you in meetings, the friend who always remembers your birthday, the stranger you only ever meet in passing. If you really want to know what kind of person stands before you, do not look for the obvious. Look instead to the 5 subtle signs that speak far more loudly than words ever could. First, consider those almost invisible moments, how someone treats people they deem unimportant. We all nod, perhaps, when someone is unfailingly polite to us. After all, who wouldn't be kind when there's something to be gained? But watch closely at a restaurant. How does your companion address the server? Is there warmth and eye contact, or curt indifference, a stray glance that signals impatience, irritation, or even contempt? Picture a friend who laughs with you, supports you, yet dismisses a barista with a wave or a grumble. In those slips, the real hierarchy of their moral imagination manifests. Ask yourself, is their kindness a gift to all, or a currency only for those who matter to them? When kindness is reserved solely for people in power or those who can reciprocate, it ceases to be kindness and becomes something transactional, even manipulative. Compassion, you see, shines brightest where there is no reward. To respect someone who holds no sway over your destiny, this is the test that unmasks true integrity. If you pause and look around your life, you'll begin to notice small moments are everything. You catch a flash of exasperation as someone interrupts a janitor, or you see another pause to thank them for their work. Which one would you rather rely upon? The practical advice here is as simple as it is powerful. Observe people in these quiet junctures. Do not excuse their sharpness as stress or overlook casual disrespect as a quirk. These are the red flags that whisper truths louder than apologies ever could. Yet, even the sweetest-natured soul can falter when the storm rolls in. Which brings us to the second sign, how someone acts when the pressure mounts. The true nature of an individual emerges not in times of ease, but when the world presses down and their plans unravel. Imagine your co-worker, who's typically amicable, suddenly thrust into a project with a looming deadline. Do they buckle, begin snapping at teammates, passing blame like a hot potato? Or, perhaps under family pressure, a wedding, a funeral, a cross-country move, do they manage to steady themselves, find words that comfort rather than wound? Real resilience, after all, isn't just about surviving stress, but about protecting others from its sharp edge. It's the friend who, at their wits' end, still listens to your worries. Or the leader who, even as the ceiling seems ready to collapse, never forgets to say thank you. Consider the power in choosing companions who are consistent under adversity, whose patience doesn't evaporate in the heat of conflict. Wouldn't your days be smoother, your spirit lighter, in the company of such people? Life is rarely calm for long, and the ones who remain steady steer the ship better when the wind howls. If you're seeking peace, real, nourishing peace, look carefully at how someone behaves in the crunch. Do they seek solutions, or do they simply need someone to blame? Then there's another sign, perhaps subtler still, their reaction to other people's triumphs. Success, both our own and others, is a litmus test for the ego. If someone greets your good news with an instant smile and a heartfelt, "I'm so happy for you," it's easy to see where you stand. But sometimes the praise comes wrapped in faint praise. "Oh, must be nice," or a backhanded comment that somehow centers them instead. Why do some people find it so hard to celebrate another's fortune? The answer lies in whether they see the world through the lens of scarcity, where someone else winning means a piece of the pie is lost, or abundance, where success is a tide that lifts all ships. Pay attention to those who genuinely uplift others, whose joy feels full and unreserved. You'll notice these people attract collaboration, new ideas, and trust, because they don't measure their worth against the failures or victories surrounding them. The contrast is stark. While the resentful simmer in quiet competition, their abundance-minded counterparts build bridges and foster opportunity, creating circles where success multiplies. As you move forward, make it a habit to observe these reactions. Who in your orbit really rejoices in your light? Whose support wavers with your rising fortune? This single insight can warn you whom to pull in close and whom to keep at a safe, respectful distance. So, as we continue, hold these three signs in your mind like secret compasses. Look beyond words and surface warmth. Let subtle actions, especially those snatched from the edge of someone's attention, reveal the truth. The path to choosing the right relationships, mentors, partners, friends, runs not through declarations, but through the humble field of everyday behavior. How does that change the way you see the next hour, the next conversation, the next handshake or warm greeting? Are you ready to see what is really there, just beneath the surface? Of course, all this brings us to a pair of signposts that can be uniquely revealing, almost uncomfortably so if we are honest with ourselves. Let's start with something we often take for granted but can quickly turn our world on its head: the gap between what people say and what they actually do. Nearly everyone can recall a time when you relied on someone's word. Perhaps they assured you that they'd stick by your side during a tough period, or that your project was as important to them as it was to you. But when the moment of truth arrived, they vanished in the mist, or their support became little more than lip service. How did that make you feel? Maybe hurt, surely cautious, and perhaps a little cynical about trusting next time. It's easy, in the abstract, to talk about justice, honesty, or loyalty. Many people proclaim high ideals, wrapping themselves in the language of virtue. But look closer, and you'll sometimes see the edges fray. The person who preaches humility, yet hungers for praise, who denounces dishonesty, but bends the truth when it's convenient. Is this not the oldest drama of humanity? The tension between our outward declarations and our inward motives? So, how do we sift through the maze of words and reach what's real about someone's character? The answer lies not in grand gestures or eloquent speeches, but in the persistent everyday patterns, a kind of slow accretion of trust, built and reinforced, or alternatively, chipped away by inconsistencies. If someone's stated values align with their actions, especially when it's difficult or inconvenient, your faith in them grows quietly but powerfully. Think of the friend who stands by you in times of embarrassment, the colleague who owns up to errors rather than covering them, the leader who honors promises gained at little glory or reward. Compare this consistency to the person who routinely fails to follow through, who forgets commitments, deflects blame, or changes their narrative depending on the audience. In these cases, over time, we learn to take their words with a grain of salt. Should we judge quickly? Not necessarily. Everyone stumbles. Here's where patience comes into play. Watch how patterns emerge, season after season. It's the repeated, observable behavior that reveals true character, far more than a single misstep, or, on the flip side, an isolated act of goodness. But now, let's turn the lens toward a different, perhaps even more challenging domain. How someone handles power, whether it's authority at work, control within friendships, or influence in a community. Give a person a measure of control, and you shed an unforgiving light on their truest inclinations. Why is this? Because power offers choices with real consequences, the freedom to act generously or selfishly, fairly or underhandedly. Think of those leaders who, when handed the reins, choose to listen rather than dictate, to mentor rather than dominate. Their authority is wielded almost invisibly, fostering trust and growth in others. Contrast this with those who, intoxicated by their new status, start to micromanage, belittle, or manipulate. Sometimes, even in small social situations, a group project at school or planning a trip, you notice how a person changes when their voice is, for once, the final say. It's tempting to assume that power inevitably corrupts. But does it really? Or does it merely expose the underlying architecture of a person's values? Context surely matters. Some find themselves in systems that practically reward hubris, while others are shaped by communities that bake humility into their DNA. Yet, moments of authority remain unsettlingly clarifying, how swiftly some shed their masks, for better or for worse. Of course, the terrain is more fraught than simply labeling people as good or hypocritical, humble or power-hungry. Are we all merely creatures of habit, destined to repeat the same behaviors? Or is everyone, at some level, capable of change when the environment or stakes shift? Maybe someone stumbles because they're overwhelmed, isolated, or clinging to past wounds, not because they are fundamentally untrustworthy. How often do situational pressures, stress, fear, the desire to finally have agency, influence someone to act out of character? Think of the colleague who, under relentless pressure, starts snapping at their team, or the reliable friend who ghosts you just once during a deeply personal crisis. This ambiguity isn't just an interpersonal puzzle, it's a mirror. If we're honest, how many times have each of us failed to live up to our professed values or mishandled moments of power? Maybe we softly rationalized it was the stress, or just this once, hoping nobody noticed. Against this backdrop, it becomes all the more important to balance intuition, those gut feelings, sometimes eerily accurate, with care in gathering concrete evidence. Rash judgments breed misunderstanding, but dismissing intuition altogether can leave us defenseless. The challenge, then, is to practice keen observation and patient reflection. Watch not just how others step onto the stage, but also how you yourself move through roles of follower and leader, voice and silence. Ask, quietly but persistently, am I seeing a pattern or just a stray shadow? Allow for complexity, not shying away from ambiguity, and remember that both gentle forgiveness and clear-eyed distance have their roles. The goal isn't to become a cold analyst or, conversely, gullibly trusting. It's to learn the layered art of seeing, interpreting, and living with the unresolved mysteries of human nature. So, as we find ourselves at the end of this exploration, let us pause and gather together the threads of our journey. These 5 subtle signs that reveal true character. The way someone treats those from whom they have nothing to gain, how they respond to correction or disagreement, their capacity for empathy in moments when no one is watching, the consistency between their words and deeds, and, finally, their ability to celebrate others without resentment. Each of these signals offers us more than a glimpse behind the veil. They grant us a compass, quietly guiding us through the sometimes foggy landscape of human relationships. Reflecting back, perhaps you recognize faces and moments from your own life, instances when someone's small gesture, or the lack thereof, revealed more than any self-description ever could. Maybe it was a co-worker who, with effortless kindness, assisted a stranger, not for applause, but out of genuine concern. Or perhaps it was the friend who bristled when challenged, whose defensiveness revealed a chink in their openness. Each of these moments, discreet and often easily dismissed, becomes part of a larger tapestry coloring our understanding of those we invite into our hearts. Discernment is not suspicion. To discern is to see clearly, to give ourselves the gift of shielding our spirits from toxicity and, in turn, allowing our presence to be a wellspring of good in the communities we build. Isn't it striking how just being attentive to these little patterns changes who we let in and whom we keep at arm's length? When we draw boundaries, we're not hardening ourselves. We're tending the soil of our lives, weeding out what smothers growth, and making space for bonds that nourish. And when we recognize the light in another, connect with those whose character is revealed in 1,000 quiet, generous ways, are we not planting hope? All of this rests, too, on the foundation of intuition, your own quiet mind, the nudge in your chest that tells you something is off, or wonderfully right. Have you ever dismissed a small act as inconsequential, only to regret ignoring what, in retrospect, was an important clue? Trusting your own perceptions is not arrogance, it's honoring your lived experience. The wisdom you gather from 100 little observations is formidable. It is the whisper that steers you away from those who sap your strength and toward those whose presence lifts you, often with nothing more than an honest smile or a word of encouragement spoken when nobody else bothers to listen. Yet, there's a humbling caveat in all of this. We, too, wear masks. Sometimes we struggle to bridge the gap between the better angels of our nature and the tangle of competing desires, fears, and habits that make us human. We talk about authenticity as though it's a place we arrive. But isn't it more often a practice, a willingness to remove the mask, to risk being seen, even when it's uncomfortable? This tension between who we wish to be and who we are in the flickering light of imperfect moments reminds us to extend forgiveness, even as we pursue discernment. Remember, character is not a fixed monument, but a work in progress, shaped by every choice, every small kindness or failure, every time we choose to act with integrity when no one is watching. And so, let us carry forward a spirit not only of vigilance, but of compassion for ourselves and for others. Can you imagine how much more meaningful our relationships become when we make a habit of this self-reflection? When we look closely not to judge, but to truly understand, to see the growing edges as well as the flowers in full bloom. Think of the communities we could nurture, more honest, more supportive, less burdened by suspicion, places where kindness is not a rarity, but a condition of belonging. Let this be your affirmation. You have the power to attract honesty, kindness, and trustworthiness, not only by seeking it in others, but by living it yourself. It begins in the smallest of gestures, letting compassion govern your reactions, choosing truth even when it costs, lifting others up rather than measuring their worth against your own. What kind of world could we make if these became our reflexes? So, as you move through the rhythms of your daily life, I invite you to keep your eyes wide open to those 5 telling signs. See, truly see, those around you, and tend to your own character with equal care. Share the benefit of your discernment and your hope. Uplift honesty with your example, tend to kindness in your words, and give trust where it is earned, not merely declared. In the end, perhaps the most pressing question is this: what if, starting today, the standard you apply to others becomes the standard you insist upon in yourself? How much richer, safer, more luminous might your relationships and your world become? The invitation is yours for reflection, action, and transformation. Will you accept it, and in doing so, help light the way for others?